Hey, welcome back. Um, you are watching the Marketing Basics video series. We're on to defining objectives, and this is part 3, where we're going to start talking about promotional objectives that are based on brand attributes. So if you've watched the first 2 videos that we're talking about objectives, you'll remember that we talked about in marketing communications, there are 2 main types of objectives. They are sales and promotional. The sales objectives are the short-term efforts trying to drive immediate revenue. You'll remember that those ones are the ones that we will be SMART goals. We will identify specific measurements, timeframes. Purchase funnel objectives are more long-term goals, like all promotional objectives. The purchase funnel ones, though, are specifically aligned with the purchase funnel or the customer decision journey, which is we talked about the McKinsey model in the last video. So now we're going to talk about the second type of promotional objectives, which are the brand attribute ones. So these are a little bit different. They're, unlike the purchase funnel ones, they're not aligned to one specific stage, but they impact customer perceptions about the brand. So what does that mean exactly? Well, if I don't know something exists, it makes sense that I'm kind of stuck at the awareness stage. But if people don't think my particular client is environmentally friendly or a sustainable business, well, that's not necessarily about awareness or interest. Like any step of the journey, if people don't think I'm environmentally friendly and say, I don't know, I sell petroleum products, well, that could negatively impact my bottom line. I need people to think that even though I'm selling fossil fuels, I am still conscientious about the role that we have on the planet, and that we should be, imagining things are going to still be around for future generations and positive. So that's a brand attribute. We're not worried about where we are at a certain stage in the journey, but every step of the way we want people to think that we are environmentally friendly. Just like with the other purchase funnel ones, you need to go back and look at the research that you did. Remember, we talked about the importance of figuring out those key insights? Well, when you understand those things, you understand what consumers think about your company, or maybe what they don't see about your company. And that highlights challenges that they face. And these problems could be, really negatively impacting the brand. So you need to do something about that. They could be descriptive, like here's a way we want you to feel about the brand, but it could also highlight a fact. There's something I want you to know about our company. So it's not just that we're sustainable, but maybe we are the most environmentally friendly brand in this particular industry. So it's not just a descriptor like, hey, we are environmentally friendly, but it's a fact to know about the company. Because if I know that, it will make me feel a certain attribute about the company is true. And hopefully that will positively impact the way I think about the brand. You got to make sure, though, before you do that whatever that fact is you're going to share, it needs to resonate with your consumers. It needs to matter, and if you're getting into factual stuff and say, hey, here's some information, you might also find that it does start to align with a specific step in the purchase funnel. So it may be better served as a purchase funnel objective rather than a brand attribute. We're getting into a lot of details here, but I think a better way to think about this is to look at some specific examples. So going back to our pizza company example, I could say that maybe Patty's Pizza's really, it's happening. People like going to Patty's, but we're noticing we're not getting that many families coming in. It's more, young adults, people coming in and grabbing a slice to go. If for some reason we found that we're not resonating with families, maybe the research indicates that there's a challenge there. We want to be perceived as a family-friendly restaurant, so more of that target audience will come in and enjoy our delicious pizza. We could also, instead of using that more descriptive thing, trying to figure out what is that attribute that we want people to believe about us, we could use this more factual example here, increase the perception that Patty's Pizza is the best Italian food restaurant in the greater Seattle area. By trying to convince people we're the best and clarifying that we're an Italian food restaurant, that could maybe help close the deal. But like I said on the last slide, you could also argue that if we're really focusing on how we're the best, we might actually just be trying to do a purchase funnel stage around consideration. And why should they choose us? Well, because we are the best. So you got to think carefully about this. Like, what are you trying to really accomplish based upon the research? This final example here, increase the perception that Patty's Pizza is inexpensive. That could be really important because a lot of people could be price sensitive and they just, they want pizza, but they don't want to hurt their pocketbook. So that could be a really important brand attribute that appeals to everybody at every stage of the funnel. But if you think about what consideration does, you could also argue, well, price consciousness often is the determining factor of why I choose this brand over this other brand. So you're starting to see that a lot of these objectives could go either way as a purchase funnel or a brand attribute. But it doesn't matter so much. What matters is, are these broad enough things that help shape the promotional marketing that we're going to do? Because we've identified they're truly problematic, and these are things that will help us get some more revenue. Okay, since this is our last video on objectives, I just wanted to leave you with some final thoughts. A lot of this touchy-feely stuff, students will come to me and say, why do I have to do this? It just seems like a lot of extra work. They just want to dive in and get started on tactics. I'm just going to build a TV ad. I know I want a TV ad. Well, I think these objectives really will help you connect it back to the research, really think about consumer behavior, and understand the psychology of why people buy things. But it's good that you are interested in this tactics, because that means you're also interested in thinking about, and how specifically will I measure this? So it's good. We don't want you to jump ahead and build the tactics yet or be sure of what you're going to do, but it's good that you're already thinking about execution, because that means you're thinking about, how will I demonstrate that Patty's Pizza really is family friendly? How will I measure that people actually really do believe it is the best? Like I mentioned in the first video on objectives here, we're not doing these the measurements yet for the promotional objectives. That's because we haven't figured out the tactics yet. So when we understand what the platform is we're going to be using, when we understand a little bit more of the backstory, what kind of data is going to be available for us to actually do measurement, that's when we can define how we're going to measure these things. And I know I've said this point many times now, but it really is important to drive home, is that all of your objective choices should be rooted in the research work. If you'd like to get a good grade on your assignment, you can't just randomly throw things out there because that's your gut instinct. You need to make sure and connect it back to the research and let us understand what is the case for why we're going to use these objectives, and how does that properly set up the campaign that you propose to do. All right, well, I hope these 3 videos really helped make some more sense of objectives. Anytime you've got questions, don't hesitate to go back to my contact information at the beginning of the deck. And if you've got any more questions about our program and the bigger picture, feel free to reach out to Christy Wilson, listed on the slide. Thanks for tuning in, and come back and join us for the next set, which we'll be talking about promotional strategy.